How do you feel about where technology is headed? And you look at the developments in robotics and in artificial intelligence, and it just seems like the stuff of science fiction. And, that has some people worried because they feel like, just like in the movies, there's going to be some glitch in the programming that'll lead all those machines that we've created to perceive human beings as the world's real problem, and that rather than serving us, they'll just keep saying what we want to hear as they prepare to overthrow us, to revolt against us. I'm skeptical that anything like that would ever happen, but with our machines. But I think the fears that people have about that, I kind of wonder if that's more of a projection of our own story. Because you think about it, in a sense, that's sort of what happens with that first sin in the Garden of Eden. Because it introduces a glitch into our programming. It skews our perception of life. It distorts our ability to think and to process. So that in some ways we treat God like he's a hindrance and a problem. And rather than serving him, our natural bent is to maybe, some of us, say what he wants to hear, while we really, in our hearts, are revolting against it. Well, the Lord confronts that problem in his people, in the people of Judah, the kingdom of Judah, through the prophet Jeremiah. And it's, to put it in perspective, it's about 600 years before the time of Christ, and it's about 800 years after the law was given through Moses. And of course, the Lord had made them into this great nation, given them a land and all these things, but they kept turning away from it. And so Jeremiah 17, verse 9, says, "The heart is deceitful above all things and desperately sick. Who can understand it? I, the Lord, search the heart and test the mind to give to every man according to his ways, according to the fruit of his deeds." Now, it's interesting. I mean, if there's any idea about which most people today seem to agree, everyone tells you to follow your heart, right? But these words from Jeremiah show us the folly of that sentiment. It shows that our hearts can't be trusted. And I think we all like to tell ourselves, well, it's not that bad. Maybe we just need a little moral guidance. And some people assume that's what Jesus was doing in the Sermon on the Mount, that it was just some little moral platitudes to help you through life. But we've been seeing that his argument is that we all push against the boundaries of God's commands, and we distort their intent. We get it twisted around. And we've seen how he shows that in relation to God's prohibition of murder in Matthew 5, 21 through 26. And then last week we looked at where Jesus does that with the prohibition of adultery in Matthew 5, 27 through 32. And I've argued that the only way that we escape God's condemnation is for someone else to fulfill the law on our behalf. And back up in verse 17 of Matthew 5, that's what Jesus says that he came to do. And we've talked about that. That means he satisfies the law's demand for atonement through his death for us, and that he meets the law's requirement for righteousness through his obedience. And then he sends the Holy Spirit into our lives to begin transforming us so that we can overcome our murderous hearts, our adulterous hearts. And then today, we continue in verses 33 through 37. And Jesus leads us through 3 steps toward overcoming our deceitful hearts. He again recalls, it's the same basic process he leads us through. He recalls the limitation set by the law. He helps us grasp its implication. And then he calls us to adopt its practical application for everyday life. Now, at first glance, I think this passage may not hit us the way that those other ones do. It may not seem as relevant to us today, but I think it addresses that fundamental glitch in our thinking that fools us into thinking that we can get away with sin. Now, we'll never be able to change or to grow spiritually unless we overcome our deceitful hearts.